Hey, it's Andrew Huang. I get this question all the time about how to get started making music, and I never answer it. I never have answered it because it is too broad. You know how many different kinds of music I'm interested in. My answer to you would be different if you wanted to be a pop producer or a classical pianist or a studio engineer or a metal French horn player. I've been thinking about how to condense it down to just the general advice that I could give out, but it's still such a huge topic that what I've decided to do is break it up into a few different uploads that'll happen over the coming weeks. We'll talk about the gear that you can use. We'll talk about good approaches to learning. Today, I just thought we'd start with a Q&A. I went on Twitter and asked for your specific questions about getting started with music. I actually filmed this a few days ago. There were hundreds of responses. I tried to answer all the stuff that came up the most frequently, so hopefully a lot of what you're wondering about will be addressed here. But there will be more videos coming, and as always, leave a comment if there's anything you want me to cover in the future. Here's the Q&A. Andrew answers your questions from Twitter. A lot of questions about how to learn things, especially software. I've been using Ableton for a long time, and if you've seen a lot of my videos, you've probably seen how quick I am with it. That developed over time. That developed over spending hours and hours every day in this program. And I never took a class to learn it or anything. I just tried stuff on my own, and if I didn't know how to do something, I looked it up online. And I fully recommend doing this, spending time with the program and then just Googling the obstacles that you come up against, whether it's how do I make a beat or even just how do I add a new audio track. It's not always the most fun, but it is a great way to do it. Just try making a project in the software, and anything you come up against that you don't know how to use, there's a tutorial online that will show you. And also, this is even less fun, but if you can stomach reading the manual, everything is in there. This is true of tons of music software and hardware. There are so many things that you just won't know that you're able to do unless you actually go through and read about every feature that the developers have put in there. I'm friends with some people who make music products, and they tell me that the majority of the support emails they get are things that people could just have figured out on their own if they had looked at the manual. Here's a good one. Ratio of time spent learning production techniques from YouTube videos and tutorials to time spent practicing and experimenting/creating music. In the beginning, you may need to spend more time on the learning just because there's so much more that you need to get a foundation in. I think what I'll say overall, though, is spend as much time as you need on learning, and then spend as much time as you can on practicing. All the hands-on time, all the experimenting and the trying and failing and succeeding and trying and failing some more, that is really the learning experience after you pick up the knowledge that you need to know what you need to do over here. I hope that makes sense. Should you expect your music to be quality at first? Probably not. I think there's a 1 in a million person who's just brilliant right out the gate, and the rest of us have to struggle and grow and create a lot of bad stuff, and then some of that will be good, and even when you get really good at stuff, some of your stuff will still be bad. I'm a perfect example of this. If you go through my older music, you will hear how I've improved. You do really need to push through and know that you're not creating at the level you could be, but that if you put the time in, you can get there. Should I take music lessons? I think if you can, 100%. Yes, you should. Got a few questions about where to start a song from, and the answer is literally anywhere. Do you do drums first or a melody first? I've written a song, I think, every possible way I could think of, starting with every different instrument, starting with a verse or a chorus or an intro or a title or a lyric idea or just a concept. There's no one way to do it. Just pick any of those things and do it. And tomorrow you can try another one. All right, let's see. How to get out of a loop, how to finish or just continue a song that you started. I've talked about this in a video before, which I'll link to, but basically the way to think about it is that all the different parts of a song will be interrelated somehow. It's extremely rare to have a complete non sequitur between two sections in a song. So what you're aiming to do is change some things and keep some things the same. You might change the chord progression but keep the same instruments, or other way around. Keep the chord progression going but add some new instruments you haven't used before. A dynamic change is quite common when entering a new section, so getting everything more intense, which might also mean adding more layers, or pulling everything back, having instruments play more sparse, sparsely, more lightly. These are all things to experiment with when you're trying to see where your song can go. I will say though that something that can be really helpful is having a vision. And this might be a moment of inspiration, or it could be something that happens when you really just sit and listen to your song and try to hear where it can go. What is it building to? What's the story you're telling? Is the emotion going to change at some point? Listening to other people's music is so huge. Listen to their music and pay attention to the structure, or pay attention to what a melody in a chorus is doing versus what a melody in a verse is doing. Listen to a whole song and pay attention to just one specific instrument. Look up what the chord progressions are on your favorite songs. Use this glorious internet thing to just instantly build your knowledge. If you do a lot of purposeful listening and learning around other people's music, you'll find the little things that are gonna work for what you're trying to create. Lots of questions about music theory. Is there an easy way to learn it? How much of it do you need to know? I'm gonna give you some bad news. There's nothing easy about it. I feel like in a way, music theory takes your whole being to absorb. You have to learn kind of the head knowledge part of it, but you only really internalize it after lots and lots of time and experience with it. All right, I'm gonna cut myself off there because I recorded kind of a rambly answer that was mostly about how important music theory is, which it is, but I think what you're here for is some kind of concrete, actionable step that you can take to learning music theory and where you should begin with it. And I've realized that was a challenge for me to answer because I learned most of the music theory I know before the internet was a thing. I had a couple of really great teachers, but I know not everyone goes to a school with a good music program or can afford private music lessons. So I just asked on Twitter if anyone had good experiences with learning music online, because I think I've learned so much about music production online. I'm sure there's tons about music theory that you could learn online. I do still learn music theory online, but it's like really advanced stuff, or I just like, usually for that stuff, Wikipedia is actually great because you already have the foundation. So where can you learn the foundations? This is what I asked about on Twitter. I'll link to that tweet where you can see everybody's responses. You can see all these real world testimonials about different services that, I took a cursory look at a few of them, and I think there is legitimately a lot of great starting points for music theory contained there. So check that out, I'll link to it. And I just wanna encourage you that it's not gonna be a quick and easy process, but it's so worth it. Music theory has come into play in pretty much every aspect of all the music that I have ever created. It helps me do things better, it helps me do things faster. I really credit having a deep and a broad knowledge of music theory with being able to create so much, with being able to work in so many different genres. I can't stress the importance of it enough. I promise you, if you commit to music theory, if you put regular time into learning it and practicing it, you will be rewarded so much in your creative journey with what it allows you to do, with how it expands your musical powers. Cool. I think that's it for today. I hope this was helpful for you. Definitely subscribe if you haven't already. There's lots more coming about how to get started with music production. We'll talk about gear. I'll get a little bit more into theory sometimes. We'll talk about synthesis and sound design, all kinds of stuff. But I hope this was a good sort of starting point for a starting point. All right, I'll see you in the next one.